make a start? Yeah, all right, fantastic. All right, hello everyone and welcome to Women in Tech Manchester. We are so excited. I even did a little happy dance and jump earlier to see so many of you here today. And also a big shout out to everyone joining us at home. So we've got lots and lots of people joining the live stream at home as well. That's why you can see cameras in the room today. We're really excited about this afternoon. We've got a fantastic lineup for you. My name is Stephanie Howell. I work at Generation, and you're going to hear lots more about who Generation are and what Generation do in just a second. But let me introduce our partners who are here with us today. So we are joined by our partners Not Going to Uni, who are an amazing resource for anyone who, as the name might suggest, hasn't had the opportunity to go to university, doesn't want to go to university, and is looking into alternative routes into accessing a really exciting career in the future. So they are the people in the back here joining us, doing all of our live streaming, but have also partnered with us on this event as well. So before we make a proper start, I want to get you all involved, and that includes you guys at home as well. You can get involved too. So if you have a phone with you, I'd like you to take it out. You don't usually get told to be able to take your phones out at events, but please do. And if you're at home, you can do this as well. And I'd like you to follow the instructions on the screen. So going to mentimeter.com, and when you're prompted, typing in the code that's on the screen. Fantastic. Give me a little wave in the room once you're there. Okay. So once you're there, you will see the question on the screen. How many people in the UK tech industry are women or who identify as women? And you've got 4 options there. It's a multiple choice quiz. You've got a 1 in 4 chance of getting this right. So give me your best guess on how many people in the UK tech industry are women. And we'll see how many people get it right. Give me a wave in the room once you've done that. Okay, all right. Oh, you can see it moving on the screen. Fantastic. So we've got 16% of people. Oh, sorry, 16 people think it's 16%. 15. Oh, it keeps moving around. No one thinks it's 46%. Shockingly. Might be a bit strange that we were doing Women in Tech events if it was 46%. Okay. All right, let's see what the answer is. Let's see if you got it right. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Okay, it's not going to show me on here. But the correct answer is 26%. So our speakers over here are very, very happy that they got it right. Okay, excuse me a second. Just 26% of people working in the UK tech industry are female or who identify as female. We are here doing these events because we want this to change. So Generation is a super inclusive organisation. We're a not-for-profit organisation who runs skills boot camps for people who have faced barriers to employment. And if you are a woman trying to get into the tech industry, that is counted as a barrier. We see that as a barrier to getting employment in the tech industry. And we want that to change. And we know it can change. And we're really confident and optimistic that that number can change, which is why we're here meeting with all of you, talking to you all at home, doing these events to try and change that number. So we hope that some of you, or lots of you, will be helping us to increase this number in the not so distant future. Okay, so if you are still on Mentimeter, if you refresh the slide for me, and go to the next question. Oh, people have got there already, I love that. So what sparked your interest in the tech industry? What initially sparked your interest in the tech industry? Why are you here today? Why are you watching at home online? To give us a couple of words or a few words describing what gave you that initial interest. What made you look at the promotion for this event and go, yes, this is something that I'd like to do. So we've got a few things coming through here. Love this. So innovation has come up super strongly. So the bigger the word on the screen, the more people are submitting it. So innovation, interest in technology. Money's coming up. I love that. You don't get women talking about money enough, so it's absolutely fine to see that on the screen. We love that. Diversity, hybrid work, career progression, working in a scrum team. Love that, getting technical. Forward thinking. So people are thinking that the tech industry is forward thinking. There's freedom there. There's opportunities to work from home, do remote working. There's longevity as well. So people are looking at this industry as an industry that's not going anywhere. It's only going to grow in the future, and that's very, very true. Okay. My favorite one here, I think, it was an accident. I love that. And I'm wondering if that was one of our speakers. Actually, you might hear more about their journeys in just a second. High salary, good pay, growth industry, high skills. Yeah, fantastic. So we're looking like there. People think this is an exciting industry. It's a long-lasting industry. It's going to be a booming industry. It's going to continue to be growing. And it's innovative as well. There's new challenges, new exciting things going on all the time. As all of that is absolutely true. And there's good pay as well. Let's not forget that either. Okay. I have to flick through these again. Hey, so who are Generation? I've told you a tiny bit about us already. We're a not-for-profit organisation, but did you know we're actually in 288 cities around the world? So we're not just a UK and Ireland organisation, although that is who I'm here representing today. We are in 17 countries around the world on several different continents. Not quite all 7 just yet, but we'll work on Antarctica. 72,000 people globally have completed a Generation programme. So we've got amazing reach in everything that we do. This is the key bit. So we are not just a training provider. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we're not just a training provider. What we do is we get people into long-lasting, life-changing careers at the end of the training program. And this is what we're measured on. So we don't measure ourselves on how great we are at getting people onto training programs. We measure ourselves on how great we are at getting people jobs at the end. So to that end, we work with over 5,000 employers around the world. Some really big names, some household names that you might have heard of that I'll show you in a sec. Some really small names as well that you might not have heard of, but who are representing kind of equally exciting opportunities and career paths. And about 75% of last year's UK and Ireland learners who have graduated or just graduated from their training programs have been able to find long-term sustainable employment through Generation in the industry of their choice. So we're not measuring whether we can get people into jobs that are completely unrelated to their training program. We're getting people into jobs that they're dreaming about, they're excited about. So for people who are on our tech boot camps, that means an exciting job in tech. And then lastly, this is, I think, my favorite stat of all the different stats that we have at Generation, and we have lots of them. So for learners who have completed a Generation program, we look at their income levels pre and post a Generation program once they're in employment. And those who've done the program, they're looking at 3 to 4 times increase in their income after a Generation program once they're employed. And that's really powerful because that doesn't just change that individual's life, that changes their family's life, their children's life, their future children's life. It could change the trajectory of the next generations of their family. So that's something that we're particularly proud of, and that's why we like to include it on here, because we think it's super important. So we run a variety of different skills boot camps, which all take place online, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how they operate and what the format of those are in just a second. We don't just do tech boot camps, but obviously by virtue of being here today or watching online, we know you're interested particularly in tech, so we're going to focus on different personality traits, because sometimes it's really hard to know where you belong in tech, and hopefully by the end of the day you might have a slightly better idea of that, a slightly better idea of where you might like to go in tech. But if not, this might be a starting point for you. So if you are someone, are you methodical with an eye for detail? You might be a budding future data analyst. So this is one of our programs. If you're good with people, you enjoy fixing things, are you the person at home or with friends that people instantly or automatically come to and say, right, this is broken, I need you to fix it, you know, you're the guru around here. You might be interested in our IT support with cybersecurity bootcamp. If you're excited by learning new technologies and developing technologies that might not even exist yet, and by learning to code, you could be a future data engineer. And if you're a great communicator and problem solver, then you might be looking at cloud programs, cloud engineering programs. We do 2 of these at the moment, Amazon Cloud Practitioner and Google Cloud Engineer as well. In terms of what we're running soon, over the next couple of months, do keep coming back, keep an eye on it. There will be in just a little bit of time. Okay, so I mentioned our employers earlier, and I mentioned that we work with over 5,000 employers around the world. In the UK and Ireland, that looks like over 200 employers plus these around the UK and Ireland. And I mentioned that there's a whole range. So you're going to see, hopefully, some household names up here. You've got the likes of, let's see, BP, River Island. If you're me, Depop is a household name, so depends what your interests are. But there's also companies on there you might not have heard of as well, who are maybe a little bit smaller. What I find really interesting about this slide, though, is that it challenges preconceptions about where you can do a tech job. So tech jobs don't just exist in tech companies or coding companies or cloud companies. Tech jobs exist in all different industries. So you don't have to, you can if you want to, but you don't have to be working in primarily the tech industry or the tech company. You could be working for River Island or for local government, City of Westminster. You'd be working for Gymshark if you are a fitness enthusiast, or PlayStation if you're a gaming enthusiast. So there's lots of different ways to combine your interest and enthusiasm for tech with other interests and other passions you might have. And so really, it's the world is your oyster in that sense in the tech industry. It is so broad. And we often hear that myth or that preconception that you can only do a tech job within a tech company. And we're here to say that's not the case. Hopefully we can see that from the kind of employers that we're working with. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the bootcamp experience will feel. So I've mentioned already it's all online. This picture here shows you a little bit about what that might look like. So they're quite intensive. And we're really unapologetic about that. You know, there's loads of content to squeeze into quite a short space of time to launch you into this brand new career that you probably have no experience in. So we're looking at 9 to 5 days, Monday to Friday. So it is a little bit like having a job, and that's part of the reason we do it. It's preparing you for what that world of work might feel like. It's remote delivery. So as I said, it's all online. We found this to be a really inclusive, accessible way of learning. It isn't like distance learning though. So if you think of traditional distance learning where you might see the instructor on the screen, but that's it, you don't see anyone else and you feel very isolated, you feel very lonely. You can see by the screen, the picture there, you get to know your colleagues and your comrades really, really well. And that's one of the really nice things about Generation. You can quite often make friends for life. You'll certainly, at the very least, make your first professional network out of your classroom. These people will become your first professional network and your first professional allies. We provide you with all the equipment you need. If you need to borrow that from us, that's not a problem. We build a program from real life scenarios. So we work with employers and with the tech industry to build our program so that we know it's relevant and we know we're teaching you things that you're going to need in the job on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to tell you a little bit more in just a second about what you actually learn, but of course you will learn the technical content you need to be successful in the job that you are interested in at the end. But we're more about the kind of soft skills, the personality traits, developing you in other ways as well. So when you leave the program, you're not just really good at the technical stuff, you're also leaving a much more confident, self-assured learner or graduate than you were before you came to us. So lots of different ways of learning as well, a combination of guided sessions and self-study. And as I mentioned earlier, this is my favourite bit. You become part of a community. So you become part of the Generation alumni community, of which, as we mentioned earlier, there's over 70,000 of you all over the world. And that is your first professional network. And you can lean on those people and you can use those people as they progress in their own careers. That gives you a network that maybe you didn't have before. If you don't have experience in tech or you don't know anyone who's worked in tech before, that gives you that instant network. There we go, we got there. So in terms of what you will learn, I mentioned the technical skills already. You'll learn all the technical skills that you need that are relevant to the particular program that you've picked. But we're also very much about these, what we call generation mindsets. So increasing your sense of growth mindset, which is how do you respond to failure? How do you respond when you get knocked down? How easy is it for you to get back up again and try again? By the end of a generation program, you'll be an expert in that. So all the things about growth and persistence and resilience are really important for us to teach you so that when you go into the job market, you can handle some of the challenges that you might encounter with a lot more resilience and perseverance than maybe would have been possible before. And then lastly, the third of the sort of three main areas that we teach are the behavioural skills. So sometimes these are referred to as soft skills. I don't love always referring to them as soft skills because I think that underplays how important they are. So we think about behavioural skills and transferable skills. Essentially all the things that are going to make you a really good colleague to have around. Employers aren't just going to hire someone because of their technical skills. They want someone who's going to add to their culture and add to their environment and be a team player and be able to collaborate with people and be a nice person to have around as well. So we're going to teach all of these things as well that we think are just as important. And then we know that this can feel quite intensive. And I mentioned earlier that we're kind of unapologetic about the fact that they are quite intensive courses because they need to be. There's a lot of content. But we don't make you do that without support. So you get an awful lot of support from us as well. So you will get, for the duration of the course and for several months afterwards, support from Generation in different formats and different modes. So you'll get a professional mentor who we employ to work with each of our classrooms. You'll be meeting them on a one-to-one basis and in groups as well. And they will be there to look after you pastorally. So your instructor is there to teach you the academic side of the course. Your mentor is there to make sure that when life happens, because we know it does, things come up sometimes, that you have the skills and the support you need to cope with that and to complete the course successfully and thrive on it. So splitting this into the 3 different areas. So pre-program, you'll meet the mentor before you even start your program. They want to get to know you as a person, not just a number. They will ask you about what support needs you might have. That might be childcare, it might be looking after elderly parents, it might be mental health, it could be financial, whatever it might be. We encourage you to be honest with us and with the mentor so that we can support you to the best of our ability. And then on the program phase itself, so while you're on the boot camp, I mentioned dedicated one-to-one sessions. They do a lot of goal setting with you as well. So they spend a lot of time with you setting micro goals that go across the course and also the bigger goals in terms of what you want to achieve afterwards. So you always feel like you have a direction to be working in, which I think is really motivating. And then in the placement phase of the course, which is you finish the program, and then in this phase, we are working with you. We're going to ignore that on the screen. We're working with you really closely with our partnerships team to connect you with employers, to help you look for a job as well, to matchmake you with interview opportunities. So that's all part of the 6-month placement phase. Often doesn't take 6 months, can sometimes take a lot shorter than that, but we'll be with you, hand-holding you every step of the way for those 6 months if you need us to. Okay, so I'm going to finish in just a second and introduce our first speaker. But in terms of next steps and who we're looking for, we'll cover this in a little bit more detail about what makes a great application later on today. But in terms of our basic requirements, we have some basic eligibility requirements that as a charity, as a non-profit, we need to adhere to for funding reasons. So we're looking for people who are aged over 18. Most of our courses now are open to anyone aged 18 plus. There are a couple that are, due to funding reasons, limited to 18 to 29, but they are kind of few and far between now. The vast majority are 18 plus. We are looking for people who are not currently in education, employment, or training. So when we say employment, a 0-hour contract is fine. And then in terms of part-time contracts, if you are working part-time, we assess that on a case-by-case basis. We have some guidelines around how many hours we think you're able to work while also balancing quite an intensive course to make sure that you're not burning yourself out. So if you are working part-time, have a chat with us today or get in touch with us online and we'll be able to advise on your particular individual circumstances as well. You will need to have the right to work in the UK. That's what our employers need. You'll need to be available for the whole duration of the program. So if you're lucky enough to have a nice 2-week holiday in Spain in the middle of the program, that might be a bit of a challenge. So do have a chat with us today if that applies to you. And you do need to be ready to start a full-time job as well after the program. So as I said, sometimes it happens really quickly. Sometimes it might be a matter of weeks between finishing the program, getting your job offer, going into work. So you do need to be ready and have the mindset of, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to take that step. And then no previous qualifications or experience needed. So we absolutely do take people who do have some qualifications, do have a bit of experience, but we're particularly looking for people who don't have that. So I think maybe by virtue of being here today, you're someone who perhaps doesn't work in tech, but has got that kind of little spark of interest and is wondering how to take those first steps. So we're particularly not looking for people who've got lots and lots of qualifications or been to university and collected lots of degrees, or who have 10 years experience in the tech sector. We're looking for people who we can add value to and help. And maybe you face some barriers to employment or you face barriers to the tech industry specifically. And that's who we exist to support. Okay. And then last but not least on here, in terms of just next steps today, really simple. If you're in the room today, please speak to a Generation rep. You've got myself, you've also got my colleague Jess, going to wave at you, who would love to chat to you in more detail about how Generation might be able to support you with your aspirations. If you don't want to do that today, or you want a little bit of time to reflect, or if you're watching at home, please do have a look on our website. We've got a great tool on the website called the Eligibility Checker. You can put in your basic details and we'll tell you which programs are coming up that you are eligible for, so you don't waste your time looking at lots of other programs that maybe aren't quite for you. You can obviously get in touch with us via the website as well, and we're always really, really happy to help. Okay, so without any further ado, you're going to get rid of me for a bit. I'm delighted and very, very proud to introduce our first keynote speaker of the day. So we have Una Keller from Macquarie, who are a really trusted partner of Generation and employ some of our graduates, and we're very, very grateful for that. And she's going to be talking to you about her journey into tech and what originally inspired her to go into tech and what that's looked at along the way as well. All right, I'm going to hand over to Una.
Thank you. So yeah, that was a lovely intro. So I think I will just skip right in. And the lovely poll that we've already done has kind of covered the first part of my slide. So I will kind of zip through this. But I just want to talk about like the opportunities that exist. So in a very, very blunt way, there's so much to do in tech. There's so many different types of roles, different types of jobs, and the same role in two different companies might be completely different. So hopefully it's not too overwhelming, but there is so many opportunities in tech that it's not one size fits all. It's not just someone sitting in a dark room on their black computer coding away, although there is those roles if that's something you're interested in. So HackerRank is like a really well-known website in the industry, and they've tried to, I guess, paint a picture of the different roles, the different skill sets that are needed to work in tech. So they've kind of come up with these 9 families. And some of these you'll have heard of and have already been mentioned today. So like cybersecurity, cloud, these are very broad topics and they'll have lots of different roles within them. So they've kind of said that there's 77. Don't quite agree with this because sometimes it's like junior data analyst and senior data analyst, and they're very similar. They're just kind of a progression from each other. So let's say there's about 40 different roles. And of those 40 roles, they're saying there's 200 different skill sets needed. So there is something for everyone is what I kind of want to drill home here. And like some of those skills are communication, are relationship building. Some of these are skills you probably already have and don't need to learn from scratch. And obviously some of them will be coding or, cybersecurity expertise, whatever they might be. But there really is something for everyone. And I think in the poll we did earlier, everyone kind of saw this as the future. It's a future-proof career. A lot of these skill sets are transferable as well. I'm a data engineer, but I know if I get bored in the data space, it would be really, really easy for me to pivot into another career in tech. So yeah, there's a lot going on and there is something for everyone. And another thing we spoke about already is, I guess, the demand. So the bottom is just a screenshot. Very quickly in LinkedIn, I just put in one of those job families, just looked at Manchester and entry-level jobs. There's 200 adverts right now for jobs in Manchester in one of those areas. So if you multiply that by 9, there's a lot of jobs. So if you're not excited, hopefully you are excited now. And again, some of these are things we've already covered, and I guess a special shout out considering of the sponsors. Formal education is not needed for this well-paid job. That is quite unusual if you want to be a solicitor or anything else. Usually formal education is mandatory, but that is not the case in tech. I would say I've learned most of my skills on my job in tech or part-time jobs I had growing up. Another thing I think I want to shout out, you already mentioned salary. So a few quick numbers. The average salary in the UK is 33,000. The average starting salary in tech is between 30 and 35. So by joining a career in tech, you are basically already hitting that national average and the sky is the limit. Obviously, there's the big tech, there's finance, all of them are very, very well paid. But if you want to work in charity sectors or the NHS, they also need people in tech and they also pay the industry standard. So it's not like you're going to be, struggling in those industries in a tech job. They need to be able to, interact with the market. They need to pay well as well. So whatever niche, whatever industry you find, it is well paid, even in the charity sectors. Don't quote me on that now, but that is my understanding. So yeah, I guess the other things we've all kind of talked about, and maybe the other one I think that's really pertinent to the room full of women is the flexibility. So not just hybrid, being in the office, working from home, but also flexible working. So I don't have set hours. I work in finance, so you kind of think you're chained to your desk, but you know, I can come in late. I can go away for an hour or two in the afternoon, as long as I'm getting my work done. My managers, my team is happy, and it's just a quick message in the chat that I'm going to be away an hour or two. So it's really, really flexible, and I think that's kind of across the industry, specifically because I work in tech, and it's not usually always the most flexible industry. So yeah, I guess a little bit about my personal story. Just some cute photos to make it very personal. So my first day of school, first year of secondary school, and when I graduated from university. So I've had a really linear career path. I didn't actually fill in the poll earlier saying I stumbled in it, but I very much stumbled into this career. I was always good at maths, went on to do maths in university and realised my error and quickly pivoted into statistics, which is basically what everyone now calls machine learning. It's just stats under the hood. So I actually got an internship because my grades weren't so good because I had a little bit too much fun in university. And then when I wanted an entry-level role, I really wanted a structured training program, and I joined a company based in Northern Ireland. So I was going to definitely move out of my parents' house, which was a big plus. And I've moved around the world with them. So I've been in New York, I've been in Singapore, I moved to London with them, which is where I'm now based. So really a career in tech is global. You know, it's not like you need to get new qualifications or, you know, get on some sort of register in a new country when you move. It is really, really mobile. So yeah, I definitely kind of stumbled into this career. I joined a grad program that advertised as data science, but really it was kind of software engineering when I got in there. But once I got in, I loved it, and I haven't left. So I work now in Macquarie, which is an Australian bank, and yeah, all of those things I had on the slide previously, like all of those are what keeps me engaged. And I'll talk a little bit later about this as well, but also doing things outside of my day job, like these sort of talks. I'm really active in our internal Women in Tech group, and I do a lot to make sure that people coming up behind me have a role model, because I definitely never had that. I very, very rarely had female mentors above me that I could, you know, look up to. And for me, that's really important. You can't like believe in something or think you can do something if you can't see it a lot of the time. So for me, that's been really, really important. And actually, one of the guys in this photo had an ongoing joke that I was good for a girl in university. And that really just like hit a nail on the coffin for me to be like, I am gonna, you know, work harder, go faster, whatever I need to do to prove you wrong. So hopefully none of you guys will have that kind of moment, but it is definitely something that's driven me and kind of kept me on my career journey. So a little bit about data engineering, and I guess data analyst is also kind of something similar to this, but every day we are creating more data than we did from the beginning of time until 2000. So there's a huge amount of data out there. I'm sure you're all aware of, you know, all of the data sources that you are, even your phone. Like every time you press something, that is data on you that's being collected by that app or your, you know, Apple or Samsung, whoever you use. So we've kind of evolved from basic reporting, what happened when. So if you're thinking about, you know, going on a trip, for example, that's just seeing how many miles did you travel. Then you get descriptive things. So how many miles did you travel? How much fuel did you use? You can maybe get miles per gallon. Then you have what's called predictive. So, you know, if you look at Google Maps now when you want to get somewhere, it will tell you what time it thinks you're going to arrive at. It has made a prediction. And then the next kind of level up is optimized, and that is GPS. So again, you put it into your phone, it can tell you multiple routes, which one it thinks is better. So that's trying to give you an optimized route. So all of these kind of basic uses of data are everywhere. You know, you don't even realize that they're there anymore. But 20 years ago, you know, you probably had a paper map. You weren't being told what was the best route to get there, how to avoid a traffic jam, which way had tolls or didn't. So, yeah, I think you can really see the evolution in the last kind of 20 years. And it's only going to get, hopefully, more interesting. So definitely something that's kept me really engaged. So I guess data engineering, that's kind of the definition of it, but it is very much trying to help users use their data to inform decisions for better business outcomes. So you're kind of the enabler of, say, data analysts or the people who know the data best to know how to use that data. So for me, a lot of the time it's helping traders know how to trade better. You know, if you think of a trader now looking at the energy market, they are using so much information. They're using weather. They're using, you know, predictive predictive models to say how much do we think people are going to use data. Because when it's sunny, maybe people aren't using as much energy as when it's cold. They're also using things like how much do we think Italy is going to produce next year? How much do we think France is going to produce next year? So much different amount of data because all of these countries are now connected. You're not just looking at what's happening in the UK. You're looking further afield. That's kind of the same in most of the industries. You know, the computers are getting smarter and faster, and because of that we can use more and more data to make better and better decisions. So hopefully no one laughed, but that's kind of funny. So hopefully you're already excited, and these are my top tips on what I would say to start your career in tech. So just take the leap. I've already talked about there's so many roles out there. Pick one, go for it. If you learn nothing else, you will learn what you like and you don't like in that role, and you can maybe build on that as a block. So you go in and you realize, I don't like sitting in the corner coding on my own. I want to be part of a team. I want to be interacting with people daily. What other kind of tech role can I do? And you can pivot. And just take the leap. Just sign up for a program if this is something you're really interested in, and just go for it. Because I definitely never had a plan, and each time I just keep pivoting when I see what I like or don't like. I move further, closer to that, depending on it. Another thing I would say is find a good company. What you think might be a good company on paper, when you actually get there, will not suit you. I've definitely had that. I joined a project on a company that I thought was like the be-all and end-all, and I got there and I was like, well, this is not great. And left, and like I didn't feel like it was a failure or anything like that. There was always another opportunity for me, and I think that is particularly true in tech. And a good manager is worth their weight in gold. Honestly, if someone believes in you and gives you space to grow and support you, you literally will, you know, accelerate through your career. If you have someone who doubts you and doesn't trust you and, you know, doesn't give you that space to grow and improve, it will affect you and not them, and you won't grow. So, you know, it mightn't be the best company for you, but if your manager is good, they will help you progress, they will help you grow, and that's so important at the early stages of your career. Another one would be find an area that you love. So that might be an industry. We've already spoken that it's not just big tech firms that are hiring these people. Every industry is hiring tech employees. So find an area that you love, or even a way of working that you love, and make sure it plays to your strengths, because you are good at what you love and you love what you're good at, I think. And the final thing I would say is find your network. So as I've said, I've done a lot in the women in tech space internally. That's the team winning an award for one of our reverse mentoring programs that we did. This was like a recognition lunch for a lot of the females in our company who are doing really well in their careers. Like that gives me energy to keep going. If I'm frustrated at my code, or I'm, you know, frustrated at whatever data thing I'm trying to do, having something that I can take a step back that still work and gives me passion, gives me drive, is so important. Also broadens your skill set and broadens your network. Like, I wouldn't know about Generation if this wasn't something that I was interested in, and, you know, getting to come here and talk to you guys.
Okay, so you'll have loads of opportunities to ask our speakers questions in our panel discussion a little bit later on as well, and they're going to very kindly stick around a little bit later for we just to sort of do coffee and chat and networking. So if you don't want to put your hand up in the room, that's totally fine. We absolutely get it. So you can have a chat with them a little bit later. So we're going to hand over to our next speakers. So if I grab that off you. So if we can just say thank you to Una. So, delighted to be joined by Leylu Dada and Sephora Amlan from Neo Group, who are going to be talking to you about what Neo Group does, different routes into tech as well, and again, their journeys into tech, and how you might like to follow in those footsteps.
Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me? Yeah, good.
Hi everyone. Sorry, my voice is a bit it's going slightly because of the flu, but it's so good to be here. My name is Sephora Amlan,
And I'm Laulu Dada, and we are from Neo.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be talking to you a bit about our journey into tech because we are like non-technical techies, so to say. And we'll be talking a bit about that and just who Neo are. In general, Neo is a group of companies. So we are made up of Neo boot camps. We run boot camps for Black women. We also are building a learn-to-earn platform. So this is a software that enables women to learn technologies through an app. And then we also have a hair and beauty brand. So we're a conglomerate and we operate in different ways. So we're just two of about 20 of us. And we've been able to achieve quite a lot in a short amount of time. So we are currently onboarding women to learn about tech boot camps as well. We are a community of 7,000 women. And what's really been powerful about Neo is that we started off just running events. We started off just reaching out to women in our community, connecting with women that looked like us, that were struggling, because less than 2% of Black women actually exist in the tech community or in the tech industry, and that was really big news to us, and that's one of the pain points that we work to solve. I'll let you speak, Sephora.
No, you said it perfectly, especially because I'm the partnerships lead at Neo, so I get to really speak to various organizations, and I always tell them, how many like Black women do you see on your teams? How many, I know there's already an issue in terms of increasing women, but how many Black women do you see in some of your teams? And some of them can't really answer the question. So it's really good to know that we are on a social mission. As much as we are a for-profit organization, we do have that social change agenda that we are keen on solving. So yeah, that's all I have to add.
Okay.
So who would you like to go
You go
first?
first.
She's probably the kindest COO. Look how humble she is. Let me go first. So again, Sephora Amlanoshu. I'm partnerships and employability lead at Neo. So my job really consists of really partnering up with different organizations, varying from like KPMG, Goldman Sachs, etc., to smaller organizations as well. Also really focused around the employability area of what we do, making sure that a lot of the women who come onto our boot camps who get involved with us are also being recruited and are being employed, because that's the whole point. So really good. And I guess interesting fact is I'm Ivorian, so my first language is French.
Lovely. So your journey into tech, Sephora.
Yes, actually, yes. I wanted to let you introduce, but I'll go in and say it. So my journey is quite interesting. I actually went into tech by accident. It does happen sometimes. Yes, it does. It really does. I didn't really understand tech back then. Tech was not as sexy as it is now. It wasn't those subjects that you wanted to do in school, personally for me. And I worked within different industries prior to coming into tech. So actually prior to my work at Neo, I was actually working at a law firm. So I was working within the CSR team at Freshfields. For those who may not know or may have not heard of it, it is a law firm here in the UK, but also quite international as well. And I was just really interested in social mobility, so making sure that those who were coming from underrepresented backgrounds were able to then get work experience and become lawyers. So completely it was done by accident. After that I realized I'm really good at facilitating, so I was doing that as a side hustle that became my mainstream of income, because I had different contracts going into schools and organizations as well. And like I had like BNP Paribas, which is a bank. I also had as well another law firm and various schools that I went to, just going into those environments and really inspiring those students. Then I met Laulu and Oyin, who is our founder, on a trade mission in Nigeria. They asked me how that happened. So I was actually doing volunteering to do this kind of like trade mission in Nigeria. It was my first time. I met them there at a trade mission in Lagos, and next thing is history. They kind of sold on to me, I ended up working into tech and then transitioning into the role that I am now. So yes, you should be intentional, but sometimes it can come as a accidental blessing, really. And that's how I ended up in the industry. So a very interesting way.
Hi everyone, I'm Lau Liu and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at NEO. My journey into tech was really unique because I think that when I did the normal kind of route of going into university, and I kind of did that because I have Nigerian parents, so it's by force, you must learn. But I didn't do anything like law or like medicine. I actually went in to university to study to become a social worker because I felt like I wanted to solve problems. I just didn't know how. I was passionate about people and helping people, and I thought that was a good pathway into doing that. And then I got into my second year and I was like, I don't think that this is going to work for me. Not because it's a bad career path, but it just didn't, there was just something that wasn't aligning, or a level of satisfaction that I wasn't gaining from learning. So after university, I was kind of hopping around and I ventured into marketing and like digital design because I felt like I was really good at it, and you know, people told me to make graphics for them for events and things like that, and I was like, oh okay, you know, this is working for me. I also ventured into a little bit of data, so I was working as a data officer in a charity for some time. So doing their charity kind of data, looking at their finances, all of those sort of things. And that was also an interesting kind of journey too. And then I met Oyin, our CEO, and she kind of sold me on this big vision to like be disruptive and kind of build really disruptive things. And the first thing I realized, especially on a business kind of tech journey, I realized that there weren't many women in the room that looked like me. So I'm very happy this room is diverse. Woo woo. And I think the other thing I realized is that as I began to explore tech careers and tech pathways, what was really crazy is I read a report, a McKinsey report of 2019, and it talked about how 40 billion to 160 billion, oh no, 40 million to 160 million women were likely to be displaced from their roles by 2030. And that was mainly because they didn't have the technical needs of the future. And that was really scary because I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I'm sure some of you are kind of itching to explore different technical careers because you're realizing there are good pay opportunities, or you're also realizing that actually this role would only probably last, the role that you're currently in, if you're in a role, may only last short term, or the skills that you have may be outdated. So what did I do? I realized that I didn't really have a knack for coding, so that wasn't for me. I liked data, but I could do it, but it wasn't quite for me. But I was really good at building platforms and communities for people to learn, and building programs for people to learn about these things. And I guess that I am an example of someone who has like stumbled into tech because I have other skills that I pull from in my day-to-day. So I was naturally quite a good leader. I have, you know, gift of the gab, so I can compel people to do things. And I found that that worked really well for what we were embarking on in NEO when we started doing what we do. And I think that in general, some of you in here may have been on a different career path and you're looking to pivot, and that's actually okay. It's normal to kind of get an itch with your career path and think, oh, what else could I do, or what other skills can I acquire? And that's really important. And because of the advancement of technology, we want to be ready for that already, because only 26% of the industry are actually women, or people who identify as women. And then on top of that, we realize that there are a lot of biases within technology when there aren't women, when there aren't, you know, equal people from different backgrounds building the technology, coming up with the ideas for the softwares and things like that. And it matters because when you have things like data or AI biases, it happens because, you know, it's being programmed by a specific type of person from a specific background. And so with a lot of you in here, you're all coming from different backgrounds, different experiences of life that you can actually bring into your day-to-day job, and that's really powerful. And that's what we do. We pull from our experience from doing different things to help other women get into tech, to inspire the next generation, and also because I think it's really important that when you venture into this journey, you think about who else is coming behind you. I think that, a lot of the time, especially around like Black History Month and things like that, we talk about equity and opportunities for women from diverse backgrounds and all of these things. And I think more importantly, it's important to make sure that you're also a representative and you are inspiring someone else or encouraging someone else. I've met so many mums who, did a boot camp online somewhere or just found a community, and they were working, or they found a job, or they literally just did all that they could to get themselves through the door. And I believe that all of you would do the same, especially with this opportunity that Generation is literally putting on a platter of gold. So please do go ahead and talk to the team afterwards. So steps you can take into getting into tech. You're here because you've probably found out about the boot camps that Generation do, but there are also other ways as well. But I think what I will preface and say is that it's good to combine these things. So you have mentoring programs and work shadowing, looking for opportunities within the industry, finding professionals who are willing to kind of take on a mentee and just teach you about the ropes, or tell you about their experience. There are networking and recruitment events and communities that you can join online and physically that you really want to take advantage of, because I think sometimes when you're venturing into a new pathway, it can feel kind of isolating, and you realize, especially online, that there are many people walking through your journey. There are many people learning and trying to figure out things. And, there are simple things, especially for those of you who are looking at web development or anything like that, or cyber. You have 100 Days of Code Challenge on Twitter. You have different kind of things that pull you into a virtual online community that you can participate on. And you don't have to have a lot of experience. You can literally put out there that you're a newbie, and people love to support newbies as well. So don't be intimidated by the fact that you're literally just a first time or you've never done it before. That's very okay. Hackathons. So hacking is like a very techie term. It's kind of, I will summarize it by saying it's when coders or people who are practitioners come together to build something really quickly and spin it out. And what you'll find from these kind of, well, if you're really into this community, what you'll find is that it's a great way to network. It's a great way to meet other people who have different skills. And I know that Steph already mentioned it, that it's important to like network and speak to your cohort. It really is, because those are like the first professionals that you're meeting in the industry. And that can do so much for you, because if you stay in contact with them, maybe not this year, but maybe next year or down the line, someone's posting about an opportunity and you're like, hey, that actually really suits me. That's something that I want to go for. And finally, join a boot camp. I think that, you can't shout about that enough. What's really powerful about doing a boot camp is that it's an intensive program. It's not probably as long as a degree, but it gives you degree level experience, degree level understanding, and you're being trained by professionals. That's perfect, and it's shorter than an apprenticeship. So you definitely want to take advantage of that.
So in terms of challenges you may experience, and these are very common, so I think it's good that we're able to explore these just in case you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to, enter into tech, but I'm finding it a bit difficult. So one of those things is, depending on my experience, again, I'm speaking from a non-technical perspective, but you might still really relate even from a technical point, is the networking. Tech events can be quite daunting. I go to quite a few tech events, from like London Tech Week to various events, maybe even in cyber or data, and it can be quite overwhelming when you're in the room and the majority are male. You will find that in most of the tech events, unfortunately, they are still predominantly male. Now, shout out to the men that are in the room. We do like you, we really do. But it can be quite intimidating at times when you don't really know what to say or you feel a bit quite lost. It takes time, and it's not about being extroverted or introverted when it comes to networking. I think it's good to kind of remove some of those stereotypes. You can be a more introverted person and want to network with somebody, even if it's a bit daunting at the beginning, but we highly encourage you to do so. The beginning might seem a bit alien when you're going to different industries, because it's a great way to, speak and understand what is happening in the industry, because the tech industry unfortunately changes at a rapid pace. So it means that you have to be aware of what's going on at the moment. Imposter syndrome. How many people have had imposter syndrome before? Can I put both? Is that? Yeah, many of us have, including myself. I'm a partnerships lead, partnerships manager, managing a team, and I still feel like, am I doing great? Is this, am I faking it to make it? Like, no. But imposter syndrome is a normal thing. However, one thing I would say is, as much as sometimes it may come, it doesn't have to stay there. You have to see yourself as qualified. You got to see yourself as having something to bring to the table and almost as being valuable. I had an advice actually from somebody who said you got to put a consultant hat on. A consultant is always ready to advise, is always ready to bring value to a client. Your client or stakeholders may look different. If you are a data engineer or you're working as an AWS cloud practitioner, etc., your clients could be your internal stakeholders, or your client could be external stakeholders. But even if it's your colleagues, treat them as clients, treat them as people who you're bringing value to. But you are qualified to be in the room, because most of the time you'll meet people who are 20 years in and they'll still tell you they're not too sure. I mean, I'm going to study a master's at Cambridge and I still don't always feel like I know everything. So I promise you, don't even feel unqualified or feel like you don't know enough. Just keep learning, keep growing, learning new skills quickly. I must admit, one thing I have learned about being in the tech industry is you gotta learn a lot of skills. I think there's this misconception that if you're doing specific roles, especially those who may have come from a software engineering background or etc., and you're currently constantly coding all the time, they don't necessarily need to speak to as many people, because most of the time their priority is focused around coding. But no, you still have teammates, you still have people that you work with within the organization. So as much as you got to learn some of the technical skills, I encourage you to learn soft skills. I spoke to one recruiter from a really large organization, and he used to say to me, you can teach someone the technical skills, but you can't teach somebody how to be a good person. You can't teach somebody to be a good team player. You can't teach somebody always to have integrity. You can't teach somebody, how to kind of like stand out or be motivated. So don't underestimate wanting to actually build on those soft skills, because it's true, some things can't be taught. Some things, if you don't have it in you or you don't desire it for yourself, it can be quite of a struggle. So I really encourage you, try to learn new skills, but not just the technical bit, but really push yourself. Public speaking, speaking to people, being a better communicator. It takes time, but you can definitely do it. Let me know if I'm going too fast as well, and I'll slow down. Adapting to a new industry. How many of you are transitioning from an industry outside of tech? Raise of hands. Great, that's fine. Good, I love those hands up. Now, the tech industry, like I said, is quite fast, but I don't want you to feel like it's daunting. It's an exciting industry. There's so much. It can't really be generalized because it's so like there's so much variety, but it is changing, which means that one of the key skills I would encourage those who are transitioning from a different industry is I subscribe to a lot of like the Google updates. I subscribe to a lot of like news channels. I subscribe to various newsletters, listen to some podcasts, do a lot of that, because I'm telling you, one day you can be sitting down and you think, oh my gosh, tech industry, sexy. Everybody wants to be a software engineer. Then ChatGPT came. Everybody wanted to be a data analyst and a data engineer. And then one minute you're speaking to an organization and you think you're going to do a contract. And the next minute they're like, well, everybody's being made redundant. And you're like, oh. So the industry is it goes quite fast, and that's not to scare anybody. No one's going to lose anything, but it's just to give you an idea that if you're not ahead of the game, you could be speaking about something that actually something was released on the news about a certain change, and you're like, oh, was it really? And I've been that person, and you don't want to be that person, basically. So always stay up to date. See it as a fun exercise. If you're somebody that's quite competitive, and whatever you are, whether you're coming from a sport background or not, you always want to know what's next or what's new. If you're whatever it is, just treat it like that. You always want to know what's coming next, because that's what can make you it can lead you to becoming a subject matter expert. It can lead you to being the go-to person. And I think tech is quite good when you can be a go-to person, when people know that you're really good at something, and someone can go to you. So that's a great way to overcoming those challenges. And some of you, I don't know if any of you have experience, managing a team before. Raise your hands. Great. A lot of people in this room. That's good. There's still a few people in this room. If you haven't, this is a great opportunity to work your way up. But managing a team, sometimes don't even see it as you've got to be the line manager. You're going to deal with different personalities in any working environment, in any industry. And I think we underestimate a lot of that because we always focus on technical skills. Really build on the emotional intelligence. That's something I'm still growing and learning in, having experienced different personalities within a team, grow to understanding different people. Even if you join a team, understand the kind of style of your manager. Try and take a personality test. Try to know what your type is. I know I'm an ENFJ. I'm naturally very extroverted. But what if you're working with somebody that's a bit more introverted? Learn to adapt and really understand the different people that you're working with. It will give you a great superpower, I think, that people really underestimate. So those are some of the challenges you may experience, but I'm saying they're not challenges. They're actually going to be things that you'll overcome and that you'll do really well. So I think that's a great way to kind of flip and have that growth mindset. They're not challenges. They're things that you can easily overcome with the right strategy in place and the right kind of steps that I've highlighted. So has that helped? Hands of hands? Yeah, that's great. Awesome.
Okay, so we kind of broke things down into like technical and non-technical skills, and also how you can stand out, because we know that a lot of you are a mixed bag, so you'll be coming from different kinds of experiences, and we want you to pull on that when you're going into those roles. Like literally, you can maximize off of the experience you do have, and even if you spent time, for example, in hospitality and you're going into a tech role within a food company, this is a good kind of marriage because you have a level of understanding already. I'll start off with technical skills. So AI and AI softwares. Woo! No? Okay. All right. Data analytics, design skills, design softwares. Also, you have like certified management skills. So for those of you that have like business development kind of skills, CIPD kind of certification, that's also really helpful. Those are some of the skills that you can use and transfer them. Programming languages, so that's, especially if you're a developer. Especially if you're a developer, you have like programming languages like JavaScript or SQL, things like that. Also spreadsheet proficiency. So Steph mentioned this already. So if you have an eye for detail and you're a bit of a spreadsheet person, then you can definitely use that skill. It is transferable. Project management, or in the tech world they call them Scrum Masters, or technical project managers. But these are all skills that some of you may already have or be looking to develop, and they're very attractive in the industry right now.
Amazing. When it comes to the non-technical skills, I think I've spoken about those, but I'm going to touch a bit. Empathy. People underestimate empathy as well. It's good to be empathetic, even when you're dealing with clients or different people. Try to understand where they're coming from, but also remain firm. It's having that assertiveness, but the understanding, because we're all humans, right? We need to really aim to understand people who we work with, because behind the computers are people at times working those. So adaptability and resilience, that's one thing that I can't stretch enough. Sometimes there requires a lot of resilience in the tech industry because of the way things are changing, because of, we saw a lot of things happen in the tech industry recently. Having that resilience and adaptability is quite key, depending on where you work, but also just in the industry in general. If you feel like, oh, I don't have that, some of those resilience, practically speaking, people say go to the gym, find ways to actually stretch your resilience because it's a mind thing, going the extra mile, even when things are quite tough and things are kind of speeding up. That's a really good thing. Collaborative working. I'm a big collaborative worker. I know some people are very independent, and that's fine. But sometimes it's good to work collaboratively, try to get to know different departments. Get to know different areas of the business, really aim to see how it kind of fits in. So whether you're a data engineer, try to understand a bit more about the kind of project managers, in my perspective, even as the partnerships lead, I have to work very closely with program managers. I work with the employability careers coach. I might work with, other people within the kind of different departments that understand how everything kind of works together. So there's a lot of interlinks sometimes. So don't always feel like you've got to stay in your in your area. Try to be curious and really see how everything works, especially with the company that you're going to be going into. That's a great way to stand out as well. It's a good tip. Obviously non-technical things as well in terms of people management and business development. In case you do decide, even though our aim is obviously for you to do the technical skills, there are so many other ways that you can transition into in non-technical roles within tech. So they are like customer success, that talks of kind of like business development. There is account management. There is other forms of like kind of like finance and other areas within the tech industry. So sometimes if you do find that, okay, this hasn't quite worked out for me, it's not the end. It's really, really not the end. I think it's so good for you to understand your strengths, and that's where I guess like people management comes in, talent management, etc. But in terms of actual careers, but when it comes to skills, some of you are thinking, can that still link with me? Yes. Try to get to know people. See yourself as well as a leader. Whether you are in an entry-level role, take initiative, take ownership, take leadership for certain things, meaning volunteer, study, try and find out if other things could work, challenge nicely, try and challenge sometimes the way things work, make suggestions. You are qualified to make those. And to be honest, I'm sure that most of the teams that you're in will want that. They need to get new ideas. They need to get new perspectives. They're probably tired of doing the same thing. And sometimes when somebody can actually make suggestions, that can be a really, really good thing. So I really encourage you to actually not see leadership just as a hierarchical thing, but you need to first see it that you are qualified enough to make suggestions, and that will enable you, that will require you to kind of change your mindset and to overcome the imposter syndrome as well that I spoke about. And then in terms of non-technical skills, I sit really in that area as the business development, so partnerships, etc. But also business development, some of you are thinking, how does that actually relate if I'm going to become a data engineer or a data analyst or AWS? It kind of comes with the networking bit. When you go to London Tech Week and you're speaking and networking with different people, you're having meaningful exchanges as well with different people within industry. That builds up your network. That can enable you to actually pass on some information to the sales team within your organization, because you're working on something that actually a potential client might like. You'll be so surprised on who you can bump into, especially at areas like London Tech Week. You'll meet all kinds of people from millionaire founders to high levels VCs, etc. Always see yourself as a brand of the company and organization you're in. Never think that business development sits just with the person that is selling, but really see yourself as the brand that is going into these places, working in these organizations, who can end up networking with all different kinds of people. So always see yourself as the brand, and that can actually also lead to business development and more recognition for your organization as well, because you're an ambassador relatively. Passion to learn. You've got to have the passion sometimes, sometimes even when the passion is not there, it's the dedication and the commitment, because sometimes learning can be fun and sometimes learning might not be so fun. And that's just given the realities of just life in general. So always try to find the passion to learn so that you don't become stagnant, so that you don't feel like, okay, I know enough. push yourself, see further ahead. I've had to do that even in working in the tech industry. I decided I was going to go back to uni and do a master's while still working full time at Cambridge, and I just had to I'm just pushing myself to learn more, to know more about innovation, to learn more, be surrounded by different types of people who would really challenge me. So I'll give it back to Lauli on how to stand out.
Yeah, and I think in your job searching process, after you've gone through the boot camp, after you've gone through the program, you want to pay attention to some of these things. And I heard a career coach say something really interesting one time. So I don't know how many of you know what a chief marketing officer is, like a CMO of a company. Yeah. Okay. So that kind of role is they basically talk about the results that the company is achieving, specifically in the area of marketing. It's their role to make sure the company is visible. And they said in that workshop, it is your role and your responsibility to be your own CMO, to make sure that you are communicating the results that you've had, and also to be visibly talking about what you have been able to achieve. And I think that all of you should be very proud of the fact that you're looking or even interested in embarking on a boot camp to learn a technical skill. So some of the things that we have observed that really help people, especially when they're going into their roles, when they want to negotiate a higher pay, when they're looking to move up. And I will just say as a side note that something that is really interesting about tech is that, you know, in normal roles, they're kind of more straightforward. You spend like 5 years in one role and you kind of like do that and then you progress, and then that will be like another, it takes a lot longer. What I've literally seen people hop over, it's the best kind of description I can use. I've literally seen people hop like 3 years, 4 years into higher roles, higher responsibility, higher pay within 3 or 4 years. So what would normally in another career path have taken them 7 years to achieve, they're doing that in 3 or 4 or 5 years. And it's because in the tech industry, you're promoted because of what you're able to do and how you're able to relate with people, not necessarily kind of like having a degree or anything like that. So that's what's really powerful about being able to move into tech. So working on mini projects, you're going to have assignments on your boot camp, but it's also important to make sure that you are testing those skills and making sure that you can implement it in different sort of ways, implementing those skills in different sort of ways. That's really important. Making sure that you're visible, so talking about it on LinkedIn. That is like the Instagram for professionals. Woo! And always look for ways to add value. That's really important. I think you'll hear that over and over again. Being excellent. I think excellence is something that not a lot of people kind of mention, because it's more so about like, people talk a lot about, you know, getting your work done and doing your job well, but actually doing your work excellently is also important. Communicating your results and also failures. So talking about what you've been able to do well and talking about what you haven't been able to do well, really important. I met with one of the directors for Birmingham KPMG. It was KPMG, no, Goldman Sachs. And he said, he was talking about his journey into tech and how he's been in Goldman Sachs for 20 years. And, you know, he came from a really rough part of Birmingham. And he said something that really stood out to me. He said that when he came into Goldman Sachs at an entry-level role, he told his manager his aspirations. And he said, I'd really like to work in New York one day. And you know, he kind of forgot about it and just got on with his role. And, you know, it was time for a promotion into a different kind of role. He was moving somewhere else in the company. And his manager actually put him forward for a role that would be based in New York. And I think there's so much power in talking about where you want to go with your skill set, where you want to go with your aspirations. So if you're looking at cloud engineering or data analytics or even becoming a Scrum Master or whatever it is, make sure that when you do get in that role, you are talking to them about like where you'd like to go with that. Una mentioned it, that if you have a good manager, they're going to help you and support you to get to that place. So really important to talk about what it is you want. You want to add something?
Because I just wanted to add on the be excellent. Sometimes being excellent can be quite daunting for some people because sometimes people think excellence has to be perfection. Excellence is not perfection. Excellence is just you being consistent in improving yourself, and the system is that level of consistency in really doing great work consistently. And that's what makes you excellent. It's not perfection. So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, the pressure of being excellent, don't see it that way. See it as consistently providing good work over time. And you got to keep doing it. That's why excellence can be developed. So you can become excellent in what you do. So yeah, that was just an encouragement there.
Be ambitious. I, as crazy as some of the things they say are, I really like tuning into things that Elon Musk says because he just believes anything is possible, and that's why he's launching space projects and running a company where he has self-driving cars. But I think it's important to literally think beyond, think beyond where you are right now, and think, okay, where would I like to be 3 to 5 years time down the line, and think strategically about how you want to get there. That's also really important. And finally, staying curious. The there are technical skills that you may never learn, but that within your area of specification, within the pathway that you choose to take, make sure that you really become a master, and stay curious about what is new and upcoming in those areas. Yeah, thank you so much.
So feel free to connect with us.
Well, thank you so much. Both thoughts that I thought were fantastic, and hopefully gave you lots of inspiration to look at next steps, think about next steps, figure out what those next steps look like in slightly more practical terms maybe than how you felt about them when you came into the room today or you started watching online today. So we are going to take a short break now so we can all stretch our legs, pop to the loo, have a cup of tea. So we're going to restart again in 10 minutes time. So at 3:25, we will restart the session. So feel free to stretch your legs, explore the building, grab yourself a drink, and if you're at home, yeah, do the same thing. And we'll see you shortly. as a group. So we're going to be asking them some questions. We're also going to be opening up to the room and online if there are any questions that you would like to ask them, if you're feeling brave. But we have a few questions prepared as well, just in case. So please do have a think about any questions that you might like to ask our speakers. You can direct your question to all of them. You can direct your question to one of them or two of them. That's absolutely fine if it's something a bit more specific. But this is your opportunity to ask what you would like to know from them. Okay, so hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I wonder if we could start with, you have already told us a bit about your journeys into tech, but maybe start with what originally sparked your interest. And when I asked that question on the slide earlier, what did you all say? What originally sparked your interest in tech? And if it was an accident, that's fine.
I'll go first. I think definitely when I realized actually tech is really interesting, it was the innovation. I think that really stood out. I know there's also the big noise around salary, but it really does depend on what you do within tech. But I would say innovation was a really key thing. It's an industry that is still going through a lot of growth, and there's such a really good opportunity to shape it depending on what area you're in. And I was excited by that. I was excited that no day is the same, especially because you can work for a startup and you can work for a large organization. So from a tech startup perspective, there's a lot of opportunities. You can meet so many different types of people. Like I said, going to London Tech Week, you meet founders just dressed in regular jeans, etc., who are multimillionaires, or you meet people from like the Web3 space, and you find out about really kind of cool things around that and crypto and all of those different stuff. And then the next minute, you're also finding out about ChatGPT and the influence of that. And you're having a colleague at your office who we've got as a subject matter expert write an article about the bias. It's just one of those things where it's just not the same. And I think that's what made me think, oh, wow, this is actually quite a cool industry. And it's very good for us to really shape D&I, especially in this space, because it's still so underrepresented. So there's a lot more opportunities for more ethnic minorities and underrepresented individuals to also bring forth their contribution. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'd say for me it was like seeing the impacts of data. So I was doing a stats degree and I had to do this follow-up project. It could be on absolutely anything. My supervisor wanted me to do it on Twitter data to see there was like a general election in Ireland where I was from at the time. And no one was tweeting at that time about it, but there was another referendum that was coming up, and the amount of noise that was happening on Twitter, it happened to be about abortion rights, and this was around the time that Donald Trump said some controversial things about women who had gotten an abortion, and the impact of that one sentence on the Twitter data, as I was analysing it, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, I could really, really see real life events impacting the data that I was looking at, and I was able to like tell a story with it, and that for me was cool. I was like, this, being able to correlate real life events to what you're seeing in front of you in a data set. I'd never seen that before, and it was just really fascinating for me. So that's kind of what sparked my interest, I guess, into data and kind of how I ended up here.
I think for me it was the kind of innovation, kind of like what you said, but more so because slight confession, I'm an app junkie. So I download stuff, I play around with it, and then I delete it. And I think what was really cool, what sparked that interest was just seeing the kind of creative things or solutions that people were building. And I was really curious. I was curious about, why we had a Facebook and why we had an Instagram and a Twitter and all these other platforms that we use. And you realize that it wasn't just built by machines, it was built by people who think and breathe, and they're not robots. So I thought, oh, okay, this is fascinating. Like, what else can we build? Yeah.
So in your talks, you all mentioned a little bit about your current roles, but I wonder whether you could say a little bit more about what your day-to-day looks like. Is there such a thing as a typical day in tech? Probably not. That's my guess. What can you pick out a couple of things that might happen in your week? Bring it to life for people who might not know anyone who works in a tech role or in a tech company.
Yeah, I can start.
Sorry, can you pass that noise for the live stream?
So yeah, for me, I manage a team now, but I also manage like a real-time application. So we're looking at data that's happening milliseconds after what's, a trade occurs on an exchange. We're doing aggregations on it in milliseconds. So typical, unfortunately at the moment, something always goes wrong. So trying to figure out what went wrong, fix it, and make sure that our business users know, oh, there might be a problem with our data today, and just make sure that they're aware of what's happening. So really that hands-on coding skills, looking through logs, a lot of attention to detail. I manage a team, so making sure that they're happy. We have a generation grad at the moment, so helping to train her up. And we have another new person on our team as well, so making sure that they're all kind of set up to succeed really is really important. And then the boring stuff like planning what we're going to do next and making tickets or tasks that people can work on in the next kind of few weeks. So maybe not as exciting, but yeah, and obviously when I can, being a little bit more senior, I don't code as much as I want to, but always try and find some time each week to make sure that I'm still keeping up to date with those skills and progressing the application that I build.
Yeah, so my day looks completely different, I think, as well, because we're a startup. So I'm currently actually going through contracts. So I'm building like a contract for one of our key clients. We're going to be partnering up with like JP Morgan. So I'm like looking at a lot of legal text on exciting days. I'll be kind of like working with different clients, like doing virtual calls, speaking to them, doing our presentation. We've got like a partnership deck that we do every Tuesday. Actually, happens in the afternoon, 2 p.m., which I miss. I normally have like a team session with my team every Tuesday so that they present, they write what they've done within the week in a nice kind of presentation, and they keep track of all their challenges and what they were able to achieve. I do that purposely so that they can keep it for when it's like appraisal time and they have evidence of all the great stuff that they've done so that they can store it up. So I always make them do it mainly for them, not really for me, so that they can store up their achievements. It works really well, actually. And then I might just to do different things. I get involved as well from the events perspective, which Laulu kind of like leads on, and we work on exciting events that we're going to be doing with HSBC. So looking at those like looking at that and creating stuff to do with eligibility, and then the next minute I can be working on a proposal. So it just really varies. Other really exciting times is when I go to events. So I go to a lot of events. I'm going to be planning quite a few of the events I'm going to be doing for the end part of the year. It's even more fun if it's abroad. Right at the moment, at the moment they're all in the UK, in London at the moment. I mean, boo. I mean, yay. So yeah. So that it would really vary. It can go from really kind of tedious paperwork to I get to speak to really great people and really kind of tell them about pushing real change and D&I, and also doing speaking engagements. So finding out actually great news when you're doing Zebra Live, which actually our CEO is going to be also like speaking at. So yeah, depends.
Yeah, startup life is a little bit different because I think it's just understood that you wear many hats, but I think for me it really varies. Some days my days are full of like meetings, like strategic meetings with partners, planning meetings, and also because I lead or I head the operations, that's like that I am the person with the whip. So essentially, these are our plans. When are they going to get done, or how do we get them done? So I spend a lot of time interpreting what our tech team are saying and communicating that to like our ops teams and the other people in the other parts of the organization. So there's a lot of stakeholder management, a lot of relationship building, a lot of talking, which is really good because, that's kind of my bag. But, other times it's speaking at events like today, sharing my knowledge base and my experience. Other days it can be, having hard conversations just about maybe we've not met specific deadlines and how we're going to pivot, thinking about plan B, C, D, and E. So it really does vary, but I think that the privilege that I get in operations is that I get oversight over what's happening in the organization. So I understand the the software building aspect of things, and we talk about UX design and user experience and what color the button is and why it needs to be that color. And then the other side, I'm talking to, you know, program managers, I'm talking to people who are relating with our customers, I'm working with Sephora, we're talking about events. So yeah, it's very much a good mix of
Definitely
cocktail.
no such thing as typical day then.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right, so changing tack slightly, casting our minds back to the start of the day where we talked about that horrible statistic that only 26 people in the UK tech industry, 26% of people, sorry, that would be awful, wouldn't it, if it was 26 people. 26% of people in the UK tech industry identify as women, and we want to do something about that. Why do you think there are so few? What are the challenges, either that you faced personally or that you're just aware of, both as a woman in tech and maybe more specifically as a woman of colour in tech as well? What are those challenges? How maybe have you personally overcome them? How would you advise other people to think about them?
Yeah. Oh, you can go for days. But I think pinpointing visibility. So we have this conversation with partners and even with other women in tech within the industry, just about it's a lot easier to aspire to go somewhere where you see other people that are either, you know, your gender or like have your similar experience in those positions, and you're like, oh, okay, that's possible for me. I've spoken to so many women who maybe were interested in, you know, becoming a web developer, then tried to do like IT at GCSE, and the whole class was male and the teacher was a guy and no one understood them. And, you know, sometimes there's that disconnect. But also beyond kind of examples, I really think it's about what women know that they're able or capable of doing. For a lot of us, you know, traditionally a lot of women are in front-facing roles, so a lot of like customer facing roles, administration and things like that. And those are good because, you know, you're holding the whole organization together with the work that you're doing. But a lot of us don't actually know that we can take those skills and optimize ourselves in other career paths. So I think it's the awareness that's really important as well. And then finally, there are loads of statistics about how, you know, men are less qualified but more likely to go for roles than women, and it genuinely is a thing. We see it in our boot campers, we see it in the women that some of us mentee through our like some of our team members mentee. There's just kind of there's this smallness that kind of follows some women around, and actually it doesn't need to be like that. I think a lot of the time we look down on ourselves and we don't see how qualified we actually could be for a role, or just trying it out, because a lot of the time, no offense guys, I know you're in the room, we love you, but you know, a lot of the time what tends to happen, and I think this was another report that I was reading because I find this kind of stuff really interesting, what tends to happen is that a woman is doing, or a female will do a lot of the work but doesn't know how to sell that she's been doing that kind of work or has that level of experience. But guys are just like, yeah, like, you know, I've very little experience but know how to kind of sell what they've been doing. And I think it comes down to confidence and just what you believe is possible, and cultural expectations.
I would agree with all of those points. I think another thing is how to phrase this, but yeah, I think that the visibility is really, really important. On my team now, we are 50-50 split, and that is because there are number one, male managers who have been great allies. Like, they gave me time and space to go off and do all this women in tech stuff on their hours. And once you have people interviewing, like if you're being interviewed by all males, do you want to go work in that company? Have they not even made the effort to have a female in that interview so you could see yourself work in that company? You don't want to work there. That's what I'm saying. So really, like, finding companies that actually invest in DE&I is really important. And it actually, I think it goes back to school. Sorry, that was the thing I completely forgot. Like, there is loads of reports out there that females in school up until the age of 10 actually outperform boys. But it's after, I think, 12 years old where you start getting that kind of like, oh, I don't want to stand out, I don't want to be this. You're really self-conscious. Females start to perform worse, and they do not think it's ability. They think it's whatever way we're wired, that we don't want to stand out, we don't want to be confident in our abilities, that we kind of make ourselves small in that space. Like I mentioned, you know, I was always good at maths, and that was kind of like, oh, she's good at maths. Like, it was surprising, yeah. So when you have that constantly through school, I am just a very determined, very loud person. So when people say that about me, I'm like, that's not going to make me smaller. That's going to make me, you know, energize me. But for other people, they don't have that. They're like, oh, I don't want to stand out. And that is a huge problem. So like actually looking at school children, getting them involved in STEM and saying, you know, maths might be boring now, but that airplane in the sky, that is up there because of maths, or the skills that you learn because of maths. Like, it's really hard to see those skills, the boring skills you learn in school, and actually the application of them in the real world. So I think, yeah, the school thing and children, you know, trying to not have gender norms at that age makes a really, really big difference, but obviously not very relevant to all us adults here.
but important when we're thinking about the next generation and kind of how we can affect change there. So today we're talking about, or we're trying to shine a light on different routes into the tech industry that may be a little bit more non-traditional. We've talked about generation boot camps, we've talked about neo boot camps, and Una, you mentioned actually, which is I didn't know, which is amazing, that you've got Generation Grad in your team. Can you tell us a bit more about that and what that sort of transition process has looked like for that generation graduate? How are they getting on?
She's doing really well, and yeah, I think she's black and she's the first person in her family to go to university, first person in her family to get this corporate job. She's absolutely smashing it, and she thinks she's not. She has all this pressure on her. She only joined us in March, April, and it's been great. We had generation candidates already in the company, and I knew it was something that we wanted to do. We had a space for a junior, so we reached out to generation and got them in proactively. We also have another guy on the kind of another team. He was a teacher for secondary school students, and he just wanted to spend more time with his son. So he was like, I want a tech job. I can't be at home marking papers every night. It's just not feasible. So real difference, I guess, in the different paths that have come through for generation, but they've been great, like really inquisitive, so eager to learn, like exactly what you want at that junior stage. We're never going to have every single skill or all the answers, but they have that willingness to learn, that motivation, that energy that you want from someone coming in ready to learn.
That's amazing. We've got one of our partnerships directors here today who's probably very, very pleased with that as well, that testimony. No, we often hear that from employers actually, is that, yeah, you know, our graduates are not necessarily going to come in knowing all the technical skills. They will have a lot of technical skills, but what makes them stand out is that motivation, it's that perseverance, that growth mindset, and that eagerness to learn, like they're really hungry to learn. Right, well, so we throw this out to the audience. Is there any questions that any of you would like to ask our speakers, or if we have any questions that have come through online? Absolutely. Jess, would you mind being my glamorous assistant and just passing this microphone around? Of course. Thank you very much. Where am I going? To the lady in front row. Yeah, there you go.
Hi everyone. Thank you for this. My question's for you. One of your slides said about the 9 job families.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk more about that, please?
Yeah. So your question was around, my first slide had something about 9 different job families. So actually look that up. It's called HackerRank, like job directory or something like that. It's more interactive, but I wasn't sure if the internet and everything would work. But basically they are like data engineering was one, or I think it was just data. They had cloud, they had cybersecurity. I think they had like IT support. So, you know, something's broken, can you help me fix it? They had like AI and machine learning. They had maybe 3 or 4 others. Yeah, software development, just generic software development. Yeah, QA assurance, so quality assurance. They're just very, really broad kind of groupings for it, because there's so many varieties there. So I've kind of mentioned this before, but I really think if any of them kind of quirk your interest, focus towards that. And if it doesn't work out, or for whatever reason it's not right for you, you'll have learnt a lot of skills like that overlap across them. Like data engineering, I don't think it was a term maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was just called software engineering. But then it was at the kind of lens of data. Like when I first started, it was just software engineering. Now I'm like, oh, I'm a data engineer, fancy new job title. But it's just looking at software engineering skills with the lens of data, databases, querying, processing, instead of kind of your traditional, maybe an app would be, a software engineer is creating an app, but that mightn't hold any data, basically. All very transferable skills, I think, across the board. So just find one that kind of speaks to you. You mightn't even understand all the terms that refer to it, but just kind of have a look at that, and I think you can pivot or kind of move from there once you choose somewhere to start, I think.
Amazing, thank you. Any other questions from the room? Oh, Jess, right next to you.
Sorry, I was going that way.
Hello, thanks everyone. My question is for anyone who wants to answer really. You all seem like very confident women, and I just want to know, like, do you think it's essential for like entry level, like if you're starting out, or like was it a characteristic that you guys have always had, or was it something that you built on or came when you like entered this sort of job role?
What a great question. So if anyone who didn't hear, that is our lovely speakers all come across as wonderfully confident women. They've always been that way. And I think that's all work at it.
I think I was having a conversation with a really amazing lady outside actually, and she, I think I covered about the imposter syndrome aspect, and I said to her, confidence. I think confidence definitely grows with time, but this is one thing that's helped me master a bit more confidence, and I'm still mastering it. I was telling her, I could talk about my qualifications and say, I graduated with first class. I'm studying at Cambridge, all of that. Yet, still have difficulties navigating certain things, still lack confidence in certain areas. That only goes to show you that you can have all of those different things and have the highest forms of validation. But if in your mind, you do not see yourself as somebody that is worthy, or that you don't see yourself as somebody that is qualified to be in a room, who cares about the qualifications? You need to find an identity outside of what you do, and you need to focus more on who you are. And that's something that has helped me throughout my life to see that my validation should not actually come from those things. These things are great. They're not bad. I've worked hard for them. But Sephora was there before Cambridge. Sephora was there before, actually in second year I actually got a 2-2 and then went up to a first. So people didn't see the struggle and the tears before I worked hard to get to where I went to. So people only see a certain point of who you are. So I think my biggest advice to people to building confidence is you have to really sit with yourself, and that's the difficult part, and really identify who am I as a person, meaning how do I view myself? Because the opinions of people can come one day and it can go the next. So you have to look a lot internally to try and define who you are, because that's what gives longevity, and that is really what your legacy is. Because not many people might remember where I studied, but they will remember how I made them feel. My team are going to remember that I pushed them. I said the reason why I make them do the PowerPoint isn't really for myself, it's because I wanted them to have a track record of their achievements as evidence, right? So it's that they're going to remember, not the fact that where I graduated from. So that's one of my ways of telling people, build your confidence around what really is important and not what you feel you have to show for people to accept you. So that's
I would say, my confidence has definitely dipped and flowed through my career, and I'd say I'm so confident now because my manager's been great. He has supported me, being like, you can do this, go do this, I will help you. And that might start off with him being like, you're going to lead these meetings with these really scary stakeholders, but I'm going to be there, and if you forget to mention something, I'll be like, and yes, as Una was saying, and this point too. And eventually he was coming and never said anything, and eventually he stopped coming and I didn't even notice, you know what I mean? And even now he's like, I don't go to any of the meetings, but you can tell me if you need me to come sometime, if there's going to be a really difficult conversation. So that is having the people around you to give you that confidence, and you will have, your own blips in life, just as Sephora's just said, but you'll also have people around you who will bring you down, and you just need to, know that their opinion is not always the most important thing. And sometimes you'll be in a situation that doesn't play to your strengths as well. And I think having the confidence in yourself, recognizing that, is something that takes a long time to learn. But then you have that and going, no, I'm not the problem here. This environment doesn't work for me as well, and I need to remove myself. And that can happen anywhere, but it definitely does happen. I had a job in Singapore, and I was like, they never listened to me. I don't understand. I asked my male colleague, and I was like, is it because I'm young or because I'm female? He was like, they've no idea what age you are. Like, you are the only one who was thinking because you're young that it's a problem. He was like, unfortunately, it's because you're female. But he would then go, as Una said, but he helped me get them listening to me because he recognized it when I couldn't. So there's a lot of things that go into confidence, but it does come with time, and sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. Like, I'll be in an interview being like, I don't have your skill set, but I can learn it. I mightn't be able to, who knows? But yeah, you have to have that kind of fake it till you make it attitude sometimes as well. I actually said that to someone asking for advice there in between the talks. So yeah.
If I can just add to that, all of us here still have days where we're just feeling a bit about ourselves. It happens to everyone. I think it's kind of just how you respond to that. So some people kind of let their lack of confidence weigh them down, and that becomes the entire frame through which they see their world and every kind of interaction. And you can do that, or you can refuse to dwell on it, like, okay, I don't feel confident in this area, but let me look at the things that do affirm me, or the people that do affirm me, and let me lean into that. Because sometimes I think it was you that I was having this conversation with. We live in a world where we're constantly being told what else we need to do to become more attractive, more qualified, the next best thing. And sometimes you actually, you fall into this trap of not thinking that you in and of yourself are enough. But that should be the starting point. Like, I am enough, and then I can still learn more. I can still go and, earn more money. I can still go and get better skills, whatever. Like, the starting point is knowing that actually in and of yourself, you're good. Yeah.
I think we had one at the back. Well, we've got two, so we'll take those two questions.
Hi, my name's Heather. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for the presentation so far. It's been really interesting. My question really is about breaking into the tech industry when you are bringing a lot of the non-digital skills with you. So the slide that you showed earlier around digital versus non-digital skills. If somebody's just graduated from a digital skills bootcamp, but brings with them a lot of the non-digital skills, is there opportunity for them to break in at a mid to senior level position, or will they always be seen at an entry level and having to work their way up, as in like building up their digital skills?
That's a really good question. So we've seen two things kind of happen, and you can take the meat, throw away the bones. So I have seen people move up into like mid roles, maybe not senior because they want to see that you have a good track record, but I think a lot of the time it's about having receipts and having proof and being able to show when you've been able to use those skills, or especially the transferable skills that may not be technical, so to say. Also, I've seen people who have gone into mid roles play to their strengths, so they've gone into a role that's very niche. So maybe if I mentioned earlier on that if you've had experience in hospitality and then you go into a kind of tech role within like the hospitality industry, perfect, because you're marrying all of that experience with a level of technical skill, and that can push you up further in the ranks. But sometimes what does happen is, you could be very qualified in this area and then you've got no kind of experience in this other area, and that's okay. And I've seen people also kind of go into a junior role and just kind of work their way up, because that's possible. And remember that in the tech industry, it doesn't need to take you 5 years to get a promotion. You can have it as fast as you want it. I say that very loosely, because I won't say that you'll get a promotion in the next 3 months. You still need to prove that you have that competency. But yeah, I think you can. It really depends on you and your experiences and how they marry with the kind of role you want to go into. So yes, some people have been able to hop into a mid role from the get-go, and that's great. And some people have gone into entry roles and worked their way up. And, you know, in 2-3 years, they're able to go for a mid role or a senior role because they have the competency, and maybe also they've been putting their gifts and their skills under pressure and working on other projects within the organization or outside of the organization to prove that they have the competency of, you know, a mid or senior role, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just to bring in a generation example is something we typically specialize in entry level jobs, but we pick industries that are booming and where we think there is faster progression than maybe some more traditional industries. And one of the things we survey our graduates for is whether they've had a promotion in sort of the year since they've left us. And I think, off the top of my head, it's around 2/3 of our graduates, I'm getting the nod from Jess, 2/3 of our graduates within a year of starting their first job after Generation, their entry-level job, have been promoted. And we're actually just about getting to a point now, actually, and we've only been around for a few years, but we're getting to a point where we've got Generation graduates who have been hired, who've progressed enough to now be hiring managers who are hiring more Generation graduates, which just blows my mind. It's amazing. So just to kind of piggyback on what Leilou said is, you know, tech is such a fast-moving industry, so you can probably, I think, reasonably expect quicker progression than maybe you would in more traditional industries, even if you did start with that entry-level job. Yeah. I think we had one more question we're going to take. Yeah.
I believe by now we have already established that everyone struggles with. You can hear me? Okay, let me just. I said I believe by now that we've already established that everyone struggles with imposter syndrome. So my question is, how did you overcome it? And if it still comes up once in a while, how do you manage it?
Oh, wow. This is the part you got to be honest, right? It comes, I think, it comes when I'm thrown into a new area. So when it's something that I'm not used to, then definitely the imposter syndrome comes. One thing I would say is that it's, how I see it is it will come, but it's how you handle it. Now, that makes sense. How you handle it, meaning that when it does come, how do you then respond to it? And that's when I think it's important. That's how I cope with it, is reaffirming what I've done well, understanding where I'm coming from, having a lot of gratitude, and seeing my journey as well. So seeing the evidence. So a huge part of your career is to actually note down a lot of the achievements that you've been able to do, because that helps a lot as well in actually seeing that. Actually, since I've come, I've been able to probably get the highest amount of leads ever within my organization. And some of these startups have varied from Amazon to different organizations. And even if sometimes the results is not how I want it, it's about really seeing how far I've come in bringing those. So I think it's one, you've got to be really easy on yourself, because sometimes the imposter syndrome is is really measured by social media, going on LinkedIn, seeing that somebody has achieved this or that. So it's what measuring stick are you using as well, because sometimes it's very unrealistic, very, very unrealistic sometimes what we measure ourselves by. But I think is when it does come, because it does, sometimes you master one area and then as part of growth you enter another. It's like a video game. You go to level 2, you go to level 3, level 4, level 5, and then there's another adversity on each level that you rise up, you know, and what you're confronted by. You know, so it's about how do you then handle this and then use what you have done to actually say, no, I am qualified to be here, I do belong here, or actually I am good enough, or I am I am pretty enough, whatever it is for anybody else. But it's really using the evidence of what you are and looking back at your journey and using that as validation.
Yeah, I think you'll always have imposter syndrome, but you need to start somewhere as well. So the first time you do, I don't know, a talk like this, I had a bit of imposter syndrome today. And I was like, oh God, it's going to be terrible. But, you know, I'll only get better. I have to start somewhere. And remember that sometimes, like when you've just started a new career, you're not going to know everything and you have to just accept that. but what can you learn from a mistake, or what can you learn from that first few weeks, you know? And I think, yeah, noting down your achievements, you know, it's so powerful when you look back on it, being like, this has been the worst year ever, but you suddenly take out whatever little notepad and you're like, oh no, these are all the big things I did this year and they were all really cool and I did them. We actually had someone join the company this week. I ran a Women in Tech recruitment event 2 years ago for my company, and she has been waiting since that event to find a role that suited her. She started this week, and it was just like warm, fuzzy feelings inside. But at the time of the event, I was like, why am I doing this? This isn't my skill set. I'm putting myself up to fail. So, I mean, it was stressful at the time, and I've kind of forgotten all those pain points. And then when you see the rewards like 2 years later, you know, you're like, I did that and I grew and it got better. And you just need to keep remembering that you're growing all the time and you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think that my cheat code is a few things. I'm a really big fan of scaffolding, and for me, well, let me explain what that means. So, you know, when you're building a house or a building, you have support systems that help support the building while it's growing, while you're building upwards. And I think it's the same thing with life. You kind of have, you know, either a community of people that you go to, or, you know, friends, a therapist, a coach, finding people that know who you're on a journey to becoming. And so when you do get really down, and like when you fall into a pothole or a pit, they can help pull you out of that place by reminding you this is actually who you are. Because I think sometimes imposter syndrome makes you like zero in on one area, and it makes you kind of just really depressed and low about this one area that you're not mastering. But then when you look at the grand scheme of your life and just the bigger picture, you're like, well, not doing that bad, you know. And sometimes you really just need to give yourself a pat on the back, and learn to do that for yourself, because it's really nice when other people say you're amazing, or you're so inspiring, or you're doing really good. But sometimes you have to like forcefully do that for yourself, because actually you are the internal voice that's talking to you. Like the voice of the imposter is also you saying, you can't do this, like you're crazy. And a lot of the time it's motivated by fear. So when Sephora was talking about, you know, it's always when she kind of when she's uncomfortable and there's something that she needs to grow into, and it kind of kicks in. It's kind of like your biology saying, this is not safe, stop doing this. But sometimes your brain is actually wrong, and you need to go beyond that barrier that's saying, this is crazy, don't do it, and push yourself there. So scaffolding is one thing. I like to be quite reflective and mindful. So, you know, journaling helps me just kind of track where I'm at in my mind. And sometimes you realize that sometimes it's not even you. Maybe you watched maybe you watched the video, or you kind of listened to a really sad song, and it kind of took you to this place where it's just like, my life, what am I doing? And sometimes you just, like, if you're reflective enough, if you practice mindfulness, you'll be able to pick up on that and like, oh, okay, it's cool. This is just, you know, it's not long term. Let's come out of this. Like, for those of you that have a faith, like I'm a Christian, so I pray. That helps me. It helps ground me. And then also, really just the other day, I updated. I make sure that I'm learning to update my CV, because I realize that, and this could be just from like how I am. Like, my parents are kind of very humble people. They do great things, but they don't really talk about it too much. And the kind of industry I'm in, you need to be talking about what you're doing. So I think I just adopted this kind of like, oh, you know, hide about it. And so I update my CV and I look at, oh, wow, like I actually did that. Like, I know how to do that. And it's kind of just, you know, being able to reflect on what you can do, and focusing on your strengths, and just looking at things from a holistic point of view as well. So, yeah.
I think that's a really wonderful note to kind of to bring the panel discussion to a close. But before we do, I think I just wanted to piggyback on that and turn the kudos and the kind of applause back on all of you, because you've taken, by all means, you've taken, you know, the first step is often the hardest to take, right? And you've all taken that first step of coming in today. Many of you I saw came on your own, or you maybe just came with a friend or a supporter. You walked into a room where you probably didn't know many people or anyone. Some of you have been brave enough to stand up and ask questions, which is a really hard thing to do. So you've already taken that first hardest step. Not to say everything else from this point will be easy, but you've started now, and starting is the hardest bit. So well done for that. So we'll bring this to a close. We're going to have a short 5-minute break while we just set up the next sessions. We're into our last hour of the day, hour of the event, and we're going to be splitting into 2 groups shortly, but you'll come back in here to start with. So 5 minutes, we'll start at very specifically 12 minutes past 4. And this is the end of our live stream, very sadly, but thank you for everyone at home, wherever you are in the country or around the world even, for joining us today. And we hope you found it just as valuable and useful as well. So thank you so much.